Lags behind those in Europe and North America. Producer Renato Reyes explains why it still works.
Kazutoshi Mori lives in Kyoto with his family and bikes to work daily.
10 kilometers, 6 miles one way, 35 to 40 minute one way. I choose very narrow street because main streets are quite heavy traffic. Kyoto is surrounded by small mountains, so hot in summer and cold in winter. Especially, it's hard to use bike in summertime. I have to leave home much earlier than other seasons because it becomes much hotter after 9 o'clock.
Mori works at Kyoto University as a professor of biochemistry, a competitive field among scientists worldwide, racing to be first to publish their discoveries.
We need to compete. We are working slow and but very frustrating. So I eat. So I really fat. My grandmother died with diabetes, and my father suffered from diabetes. To avoid diabetes, I have to maintain this body weight. But I have to bike. 2 years, I lost 20 pounds, 10 kilograms.
It's a city full of cyclists. After Holland, Germany, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, Japan has the 6th highest rate of per capita bicycle ownership in the world. Kyoto City did a poll of cyclists 3 years ago, and they had a breakdown by sex, by age, 60% women. And that's because Japanese women shop, take their children around, go out to lunch, go to work on a bike. 1 in 4 cyclists in Kyoto is in their 60s. 12-point-something% is in their 70s. And nearly 5% of cyclists in Kyoto are in their 80s.
Sanborn Brown is an American who has lived in Kyoto for 17 years. He teaches English at a local university and runs his website, Cycle Kyoto, as a hobby.
It's a site about introducing the city for primarily for people who are interested in cycling. I own 3 bikes. I've been a cyclist for 30 or 40 years. 330 days a year, just because of shopping, visiting friends, going out at night, work. It's, it keeps you healthy. It gives you a sort of a charge before you get off the bike. This is the Kamo River, and it goes right through the main central part of Kyoto. Both sides of this river have pedestrian/bicycle paths, and it's pounded down sand, and it's perfect for walking or cycling. Well, the downside, it is busy. There's a lot happening on the road, and you've got to be aware at all times. You can't space out. When you're going straight in an intersection and there's a car that wants to turn left, that's sort of the most dangerous situation. So you want to be aware of where vehicles are. Just when I go there, I always check over my shoulder just to make sure, if possible, make eye contact with the driver.
Kyoto has few bike lanes on major roads.
For the most part, what the city calls bike lanes are just places that have been painted onto a sidewalk or a pavement. In central Kyoto, there are a lot of quote-unquote lanes that are literally about the width of a racing bike's handlebars. The maroon or purple lines that have been painted on the edge, each side of a very narrow road. These are old roads that were probably built hundreds of years ago. I think they're a joke and a waste of money. If a car is in the lane, and you are on the right side, riding in the lane, the bicycle lane, and then there's someone over here on the left side, it's going to be very tight. And God forbid a pedestrian shows up.
Few bike lanes are protected, like this one.
On Gojo 5th Street, there's a roughly 2 or 3 kilometer lane that is separated by fences from pedestrian and automobile traffic. But for the most part, the network is disconnected. They all exist independent of each other.
These cycle paths are not connected yet, but we'd like to plan a network.
Ogawa Kenichiro is in charge of cycling infrastructure in Kyoto.
We do not know the percentage of the cycle zone covering Kyoto, but what we know is that the percentage is relatively low. We aim to introduce more cycling lanes and plan the infrastructure of these new lanes. We've adopted Western ideas of having the cycling paths on the road. The transition of putting all cycling paths from the pavements to the road is happening all over Japan.
The infrastructure Kyoto has invested in the most is bike parking.
We are in an underground parking lot. You can pull a rack on the two-tiered bicycle racks to take one out from the top row. Cyclists may place their bicycles on an automatic rail, which pushes it upwards and out.
This parking facility is one of 33 the city manages. The rest are privately owned.
Bicycle parking has started to become a business. We're seeing private enterprises and companies providing services and facilities like this.
What Kyoto lacks in infrastructure, it makes up for its deep cycling culture since the Meiji era.
The Japanese have been cycling for a long, long time. Japanese culture is that people are just used to cyclists being on sidewalks. Everybody in Japan is a cyclist themselves. So if a cyclist comes up near you, you can empathize with that person. Cycling on sidewalks is legal. It's extremely common. Drivers tend to be very polite. There's not a lot of conflict between drivers and cyclists. I was cycling in the late 80s and early 90s, commuting in my hometown, Philadelphia. And there are some drivers who are openly hostile to cyclists, and so there's conflict there. And on the other end, there are some cyclists who flout the law, who don't follow rules, and are very unnecessarily aggressive. And so there's this tension. You have to be, as a cyclist, I find in the United States, you have to be a little bit more aggressive just to survive. Whereas in Japan, you almost never have to be aggressive.
Well, it is very rare to see arguments on where the bicycle belongs. This may be a cultural reason why Japanese don't argue.
At first, when you get here, if you're not used to it, it's messy. There's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of pedestrians. There's a lot of confusion on the roads. However, like every city, like every culture, there's a dance to it. And once you get used to the dance, it's great. There's a certain way that people ride and drive and cross streets. A lot of them are college students. They just go against the flow of traffic with earbuds in and looking at their cell phone. Don't worry about that. Just go with the flow.
Up next, after